Yeah, so this is our flagship medical product. It's called BURT, so Barrett Upper Extremity Robotic Trainer. That's what it stands for. It also is a nod to our old COO, Burt Dew, who was Bill's mentor and our COO for a long time before he passed away back in 2013. So, keeping the legacy, it's a family at Barrett. So we always want to honor those who came before us and, put our work out there. But yeah, this is the medical robot right here. It's an upper extremity robotic trainer used for any traumatic brain injury. So whether it's acquired through like a fall or an accident, stroke, MS, cerebral palsy, stuff like that, you can use this to help regain motion in your upper arm. And what a lot of, especially with stroke and brain injury, the first thing you have to kind of unfreeze and retrain is your shoulder. And then you work your way down to your hand, the more intricate parts, right? So you got to start somewhere. You start here. And what makes this so unique to the industry is how mobile and easy it is to use. A lot of robotic technology is great, but it takes a real long time to set patients up to actually do therapy. In a clinical setting, it doesn't work. Patients have a very limited amount of time that each day where they can do therapy. It's usually 2 to 3 hours a day of therapy. So if you have a great piece of equipment, but it takes 15 minutes to put a patient into it, it has no real value to the therapist to use because that time needs to be used to get patients rehab. They have like 2 or 3 weeks with a stroke to get as much back as they can, and it's very important. With BURT, there's a wheelchair right here. So basically any wheelchair can be rolled up to the machine, put the patient's arm in here, and basically start playing games and doing therapy within a minute or two, which is groundbreaking because the fact that you can do it that quickly, you can do your 15, 20 minutes of upper extremity rehabilitation or cognition work, and then go on to your next thing you have to do during your short time frame of therapy. And what's cool about it too is that you're doing very high amount of repetition, and repetition is very important in neuro rehab. It's all about neuroplasticity. Basically, as a kid, you keep on doing things, you learn how to do it, and you remember it, muscle memory in some ways. So when you have a stroke or an acquired brain injury, parts of your brain kind of die off. They're just short-circuited, and everything that you learn there is kind of gone. Now your brain can develop new neurons and redevelop new pathways to connect things back, but all of that stuff has to be relearned. So whether it's speaking, walking, moving your arm, writing, you got to relearn it. So the more you do something, just like if you play golf or any sport, the more you do it, theoretically, the better you get at it. Not for me at golf, but people get better the more they move their arm back and forth. But it's very tedious and boring normally. You're usually doing
it's like going to the gym, isn't it? You've got to do the same. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of the gym, but you've got to do the same move over and over again. And that's, especially when you're obviously thinking, am I going to get better? Am I going to get well? Is this going to work the same?
What's good about this too is that, there's the heavy gaming component to it. So, while the robot can work by itself with just the therapist and the patient, you don't have to play the games. The robot can eliminate gravity, so the patient's arm is basically hanging free and can move with no gravity on it, because gravity is an enemy for a patient that has no movement. It just kind of drops dead and has no movement.
Right. So that's got that assistance.
So basically, you can put your arm so it levitates and do motion. So the therapist can actually do that with you. But the gaming here makes it real fun because now you're engaging, doing all kinds of cool activities. You don't realize how much work you're putting in. And you'll see patients get tired and fatigue, but they're having fun. So they don't really realize it as much. And they'll keep on pushing because they want a higher score. They want to do better. And they're getting positive feedback because the games are made to give you positive feedback. And they're also able to work on cognition as well, which is great too, especially with a brain injury or a stroke. You usually have some cognition problems as well. So now not only are you working your arm and getting that motion back, but you're also working on your cognition.
And I suppose that we'll talk about the gaming side of it in a minute, but the engagement side of it, of people staying in the rehabilitation program for longer, because I've heard of patients get really despondent with it and they can get a little bit tired of it, and obviously they get a bit upset. So does this keep patients engaged to go through that full rehabilitation programs they need to recover?
I would say so. I mean, again, when you have like I'll stick with a stroke because that's probably the biggest thing we deal with day in and day out is stroke. Is that you have a stroke, you just rush to the ER, they bust the clot, and then within a couple of days when you're stable, they send you to an inpatient rehab facility for rehab, and you have like 2, maybe 3 weeks tops to get really intensive therapy, and therapy is only 2 to 3 hours a day, so not that intensive, but it's what you got to do. And you'll see patients who are very, very despondent, who won't engage, and won't take their therapy serious, and their outcomes aren't all that great if they don't really get the most out of their rehab. Mm-hmm. So with BURT and other technology that's out there that competitors have for other parts of the body and cognition, you can see the engagement level pick up. The patient I talked to you about in Kansas City, he was there for a week or so, and he wasn't really responding to therapy at all because he was pretty despondent, pretty sad. He was aphasic, so we had a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
But when he started playing games again, something clicked. It was more enjoyable. It reminded him of him playing Xbox or PlayStation, which he enjoyed. So, for a patient of that generation, 40-something and under, there's a real enjoyment. But even 50, 60, 70-year-olds now, they play their games on their phones like my parents. So they get an engagement level on this, and we have games for all levels. So it's pretty awesome to keep patients engaged for as long as we can, because rehab is very, very tedious.